My favorite poem is by William Ernest Henley. It's Invictus. And Invictus rings true more today than I could ever imagine in my entire lifetime. It goes, out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloodied but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horrors of the shade, but yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, nor how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. President Trump is the master of his fate, and we as a country are the captains of our souls. And together, we marry that together. And that is the essence of what makes this country the greatest country in the entire world. I love weeks like this because I have the opportunity of being surrounded by all my fellow patriots. You see, I don't care what state you are from. I don't care what part of the country you are from. What I care about is the fact that we are all our fellow Americans. We have the opportunity here in November to save our country. But what makes our country so special is the idea of brave men and women that raise their hands and choose to defend this country against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Less than 1% of our population chooses to do that for everyone else. My family is a military family. My dad's a retired lieutenant colonel in the Army, served over 20 years in the Army. My sister went to West Point in my family first, class of 1993. She went on to serve 23 years active duty as a military intelligence officer. All on. She's truly one of my heroes. She went on to get her master's degree in applied mathematics. And as a major in the Army, she was a professor at West Point, while both my brother and I were cadets at West Point. Hold on, don't clap for that. I had to salute my sister every single day. That's all. It's a damn shame. It's a shame. She will forever outrank me. It's terrible. Went to West Point, second in my family, served 8 years active duty as an Apache helicopter pilot, flew 55 combat air missions in Baghdad, 2 tours of duty in Saudi Arabia as a diplomatic liaison officer, and then I had one more combat deployment left in my life, and it was at Cornell University for grad school. It's combat, because it's really cold, and it's really liberal, but my greatest accomplishment in my life is to leave Cornell University earning a master's in business, a master's in public administration, and a master's in industrial and labor relations. I did 3 master's degrees in 4 years. And the reason why I say it's my greatest accomplishment is because I left Cornell even more conservative than when I first got in. My brother is 10 months and 8 days my junior. He's also a West Point graduate, class of 2004, right after me. Unfortunately, he didn't follow the rules of the family. He's the black sheep of the house, and I'm black. He's literally the black sheep of the house. Because he got out of West Point and he went into the Navy, unfortunately. And yeah. So we got a Navy. There's one Navy guy in the room, of course. He went on to Harvard Business School to get his advanced degree, and there's 60 years worth of military service just in my immediate family. I'm very proud of that. But it's not just my family. It's thousands of American families that lend their sons and daughters to defend this great nation. My great-great-grandfather was born on a plantation, Rosedowne Plantation. Rosedowne Plantation is 30 miles north of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Rosedowne Plantation still exists today. Three of his great-great-grandchildren went to West Point and graduated. 3 of his great-great-grandchildren served the United States military. At one point, all 3 of us were deployed in Baghdad in 2006 at the same time for 2 months. One of his great-great-grandchildren, me, stands before you today as a Republican from the great state of Texas in a red district that President Trump would have won by 25 points. I won by almost 30 points in a white majority district in a Houston suburb. The only place, the only nation in the entire world that could see that kind of progress in a very truncated period of time is this one. And it is our goal to continue this progress for the greatest time to be an American is right now. Even on our worst day. Even on our worst day. It's incumbent upon everybody in this room to understand one thing. We have to continue to fight for this nation for every single generation, because it only takes one generation to lose it all. And that's exactly what November is all about. 14 of my West Point classmates are no longer with us. They were killed in the global war on terror. These brave men did not see the age of 26 years old. They were white guys too, by the way. And when they gave their last full measure, they didn't do it for black people. They didn't do it for white people or Hispanic people or for Asian people. They did it for all Americans. And that is why we are in this fight together. You see, I no longer see race, religion, color, or creed in my life. The only thing I see is red, white, and blue. You can imagine I have a lot of West Point stories, but my favorite is the story of Trophy Point, or also known as Battle Monument. Trophy Point is a majestic piece of granite at West Point that overlooks the Hudson River as it makes a meandering southern bend toward New York City. Trophy Point is surrounded by Civil War era cannons that are buried into the ground muzzle first. And why, might you ask? Imagine entering a country at Civil War. Imagine going to West Point and serving with your classmates and dining with your classmates and training with your classmates. But if you were from the North, you left West Point and you went and fought for the North. And if you were from the South, you left West Point and you went and fought for the South. You literally had West Point classmates that were killing each other because of Civil War. The reason why those cannons are buried into the ground muzzle first is to commemorate the notion, or to commemorate the idea, that we will never aim our cannons at our fellow countrymen again. Unfortunately, we live in times where the left has dug those cannons up and they're aiming them at you. They're aiming them at me. They're literally aiming them at President Trump. And what this week is all about is ripping those cannons away from the left and digging the ground and putting them right back where they belong, muzzle first, forever. I flew 55 combat air missions in Baghdad in an Apache helicopter. I've been shot at. 55 times I said the Lord's Prayer before I crawled into the helicopter, because I wanted to be right with God in case I didn't make it back alive. I understand what it means to have that warrior spirit and that warrior ethos, to know that I have to do my job, because if I don't, even if it means my life, somebody else on the ground might not make it home alive. They might not live. And I took an oath to defend not just this country, but to defend my fellow soldiers. That's what we saw from President Trump on Saturday. He got shot for this nation. He doesn't have to do this. He's doing this to protect all of us. Because again, they're not coming after him, they're coming after you. He's just standing in their way. And the resolve that we saw from him after he got shot, the first thing he wanted to do was make sure he had his shoes back on. so he can walk off that stage with dignity and strength. And then proceeded to fight off servicemen and women to make sure that he let the world know that he and this nation will continue to fight, fight, fight. Are you all familiar with the senator from Louisiana, Senator Kennedy? Do y'all know who he is? This is a good group. I knew I liked this group when I walked in. As only he can do, he sums up this current administration in such an articulate and sophisticated way. I was watching one of his interviews, and it was brilliant, actually, what he said. I've never heard anything so eloquent. He said, and I quote, "The Biden administration sucks." That's it. I've never heard something more articulate in my entire life. He's not wrong either. This is the definition of abject failure. I'm down in Texas. This is the worst border crisis that I've seen in my entire lifetime. Our economy is in shambles. We don't feel safe anymore. My wife is from Iowa, and I have 3 little kids, and I tell you what, every time she goes out, I am worried about her safety. This is not the America that we want to live in. This is not the America that we had under President Trump. Right now, Joe Biden is polling the worst of any incumbent in modern history going into an election. And Kamala Harris, his border czar and faithful sidekick, has the worst approval rating of any vice president in the history of this country. And I want you to keep something in mind. While Dick Cheney was vice president, he shot somebody. You gotta work pretty hard for that, don't you? It's a race to the bottom for that. But I have a very bold prediction, and I know that President Trump is going to win here in November because we need him. And not just us, the world needs him. And my bold prediction is when he shows back up, by the time he takes the oath of office in January, I want you to watch how fast the world straightens up. I want you to watch how fast our border straightens up. I want you to watch how fast Xi Jinping straightens up. I want you to watch how fast our economy snaps right back into shape, because people don't want that smoke. They don't want to deal with this. And this is round 2, and on day 1, he knows exactly what he is doing, and the mission for him is to save America. I sat next to him the other night, and he has a reinvigorated spirit moving forward, especially after Saturday. You see, God spared his life for a reason, for God is not done with him, and God is not done with this country yet. And I could see it in his eyes as I sat next to him. He was paying attention, and he was hanging on every single word of every single speech, because he knows why he is here. He knows what he must do in the future. Save this country. I've had the honor of traveling around with President Trump. I've had the honor of being a surrogate for him over the course of the past couple of years. And my favorite story is this. My wife is from Iowa, so you know Iowa is the first state that goes through the whole election process. And he offered to fly my wife and I and a few others from Bedminster, New Jersey to the Iowa State Fair. And his plane is really nice. Like, really nice. And you could imagine us arriving at the Iowa State Fair, and he was mobbed by thousands of people. I've never seen anything like it. He was an absolute, he is, and at the time was an absolute rock star. My 5-year-old daughter loves President Trump. And it's actually in large part because of Home Alone 2, when he makes his cameo. During Christmas time, they watch that movie every single day, and all you hear is, Donald Trump's on TV, Donald Trump. It's like, but she never got the opportunity to meet him, and I really wanted to introduce her to him. At one point, there was a break in all the madness and all the chaos, and he was in full President Trump mode, shaking hands, full campaign mode. Y'all know how he rolls. And at one point, I was able to tap him on the shoulder. I said, Mr. President, I want you to meet my daughter. He goes, well, where is she? And he looks around. And I said, she's right here. She's 5 years old. He looked at her, and his whole demeanor shifted. Who he was changed in that very instant. He looked at her, and then he scooped her up and picked her up and gave her a big hug. And he said to her, your dad and I are going to do whatever it takes to make sure that you have a future so you can be whatever you want to be. And it was in that moment that I realized, oh my God, that's why he's doing this. He's doing this for my Victoria, and for my Olivia, and for our little boy Willie, and for your children, and for your grandchildren, and for Barron. That's why he's doing this. Because if he doesn't step into the breach right now, it's all lost. And that's the side that the media won't show you, and that's the side that this world doesn't necessarily understand. It's not about mean tweets. It's about fighting for our nation and fighting for our future. While I know we live in quite precarious times today, I'm here to tell you that this country has been in way worse shape. And although this might be the worst I've seen in my lifetime, especially after watching an assassination attempt that hasn't happened since before I was even born, I gotta tell you, we're going to be all right. And we're going to be all right because this is a nation that went through a civil war and ripped itself apart in the name of slavery. And yet we still stand strong as Americans, as a nation. This is a country that became back-to-back World War champions. And the reason why the international language is not German is because brave men stormed the beaches of Normandy in a barrage of machine gun fire to rid the world of fascism. You're welcome, world. And yet here we stand still as a nation, as Americans. This is a country that went through civil rights movement that my parents were a part of. My parents are alive and well. My dad just turned 75 years old 2 weeks ago. My father grew up in a segregated South. He grew up in a segregated New Orleans. My dad never spent a day of school with a white person. Think about that. And in spite of all that, here we are standing strong as a country, as one. This is a country that went through the Vietnam War, where we had brave men and women that served this country, and I don't care what war it was. They served this country, and they came back to this country, and they were spat on by fellow Americans. And I came back home to a hero's welcome. They never got the welcome that they were due. In spite of it all, here we are standing strong as a country. This is a country that went through 9/11. I was a sophomore at West Point when that happened. When that happened, I knew my life would change forever because I knew I was going to go to war. Do you know that for the week after 9/11, you could not go online and buy an American flag because they were all sold out? Think about that. And here we stand strong together as a country. And if we as a country can survive all of that, I can promise you we will survive Joe Biden. Roosevelt, in his Man in the Arena speech, famously said, "It is not the critic that counts, nor how the man points out how the strong man stumbles, nor how the doer of deeds could have done them better. But the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who actually strives to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms and the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, even if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls that neither know victory nor defeat. President Trump is the man in the arena. He is the man that we must coalesce around in order to save the very soul of what I know is the greatest country in the world. And when I am surrounded by my fellow patriots from all over this great country, regardless of what state you are from, I have a reinvigorated spirit in my own heart and in my own soul to support the man in the arena to save our nation. And that's exactly what we are going to do. I will end with this last story. At West Point, all of the statues and buildings are named after prominent West Point graduates that went on to do great and amazing things, like Eisenhower Barracks and MacArthur Barracks. And of course, there's a General Patton statue that's prominently displayed in front of the library with his back facing the library because he graduated last in his class, and apparently he never spent a day in the library. He's my favorite. And of course, there's Robert E. Lee Barracks, where I lived for a semester. I know this is the greatest country in the world because every time I walked beneath that threshold, I thought to myself, damn, this is one hell of a country. For only a black man can live in a building named after a Confederate general. And if it were named anything differently, then I wouldn't have this perspective. For we are not judged by the name of buildings or by the name of statues. We are judged by our hard work, grit, and determination. And if we judged every street and every building and every statue on perfection, then everything would be named Jesus Christ. But it is that very history that doesn't make me sad. It doesn't make me woke. It makes me glad that we as a country have come this far in such a short period of time. Don't ever forget that we are all in this boat together. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for having me. And may God bless the greatest country in the entire world.